Greetings, class. I wanted to take a few minutes at the beginning of week 10 to introduce and discuss a little bit about the readings that you've been assigned for this week. Up to this point, you've read several articles about various aspects of community corrections, community supervision, some of the principles that are important to the field of effective correctional intervention, specifically risk, need, and responsivity, as well as the treatment principle, the human service principle. You've also read articles about various types of specific skill-based supervisory practices. But this week you've been asked to read a couple of articles that deal specifically with correctional treatment. So in a sense, you are really going to be reading about what some scholars have referred to as the black box of correctional intervention, meaning the treatment programs that offenders engage in and the quality of those programs. So keep that in mind, that we're really moving into treatment as a specific type of intervention, because up to this point, in these YouTube clips, I've been using the term intervention fairly broadly, and I think it's important to do that. I think it's important for us to conceptualize corrections, but community corrections in particular, in terms of an intervention. Interventions that we anticipate will change behavior in the short term, but also help shape behavior in the long term. Many studies have revealed that it is only through effective correctional treatment, rehabilitation programs, that we can shape behavior in the long term. In other words, that we can take somebody who's prone to recidivism and make them less prone to recidivism. In addition, the articles that you've been asked to read, that you've been assigned, were written by real giants in the field of correctional intervention, but treatment in particular. The first article, Does Correctional Treatment Work? A Clinically Relevant and Psychologically Informed Meta-Analysis, written by Andrews, Zinger, Hoag, Bonta, Gendreau, and Cullen. These are all literal giants, that's not hyperbole, in the field of correctional interventions, true scholars that have dedicated their lives to studying the effectiveness of various types of correctional intervention. The other article, titled The Positive Effects of Cognitive Behavioral Programs for Offenders, a meta-analysis of factors associated with effective treatment, written by Landenberger and Lipsey. Those two are also giants in the field of correctional intervention, but also in the area of, or the technique rather, of meta-analysis in particular. So please keep in mind that you're reading some very, very, very important works in the areas of corrections and in the areas of correctional treatment in particular. Meta-analysis, which we've touched on before, is a specific type of research technique, a specific type of analytic technique. Essentially, meta-analysis represents the study of existing research studies. And so you will see, once you get into these articles, if you haven't yet, that the authors spend a good amount of time talking about how they went about identifying the studies for inclusion in their own study. So in other words, these researchers took existing research, existing studies that may have had varying objectives, but all essentially studied the same thing, correctional interventions. Or in the case of the article by Landenberger and Lipsey, a specific type of intervention, cognitive behavioral programs. And what meta-analysis does is it collects and pools the results of those individual studies into one study, which is really what makes it a very powerful technique. So when we look at meta-analyses of various types, assuming the meta-analyses have been done well, have been done correctly, we have what results is a very powerful set of research results that allow us to say, okay, now we have a really good idea globally of what's effective and what is less effective, for example. So keep in mind that you're reading articles that utilize an analytic technique, meta-analysis, that is very powerful, and we have a lot to learn from these meta-analyses. In addition, I'd also like to point out that these articles really aren't that long. They may look long, but if you exclude and I'm not saying, when I say exclude, I'm not saying ignore by any stretch of the imagination, but if you exclude the references and if you exclude the tables and the appendices, the Andrews et al. Article is really 18 pages long. That's not that long. It's chock full of really good information, but you're really going to have to delve into it and read it slowly, read it twice if you need to. The other article by Landenberger and Lipsey that looks at a very specific type of correctional treatment program, cognitive behavioral interventions. And by the way, cognitive behavioral interventions have been getting a lot of attention these days because they tend to show the most promise when we wish to find out what's most effective in helping offenders change their behavior in the long term. Cognitive behavioral interventions address the cognitions, the thinking and cognitions, the attitudes, values, and belief systems that are related to not just criminal behavior, but all behavior. So keep that in mind as well. So these articles really aren't that long, so don't be put off by the fact that if you printed them off, one is 35, 40 pages, the other one is in the 20s, I believe, but the actual content that needs to be read, thought about, critically analyzed, and digested really isn't that long, so don't be deterred by that. In addition, I think it's fair to let you know that that Dr. Chris Lowenkamp and myself I'll be conservative and say that we have read each of these articles ourselves half a dozen times in their entirety. In addition, we've each, by the way, and in addition, he and I have each cited these articles countless times in our own research. So that is to say, the reason I bring that up is that Dr. Lowenkamp and I are intimately familiar with these studies and the results and what they say. So please do not phone this one in. I implore you to really dive into these articles, take them seriously, read them slowly, read them carefully, read them twice, think about what they have to say. Something I mentioned a little bit ago, not all treatment is created equal. And I think it's important to mention at this point what some of the ramifications for the fact that not all treatment is created equal has. For example, let's take for example an offender that's appeared before a judge several times on several different charges over a period of time. And let's say that offender has been to the same program 5 times. Now this may sound silly and ridiculous, but it happens all the time in our correctional system today. So in theory, let's say this offender has been sentenced by a judge several times and the judge notices that this offender has graduated from Pathways to Change. I'm just using that as a generic title. This offender's graduated from Pathways to Change 5 times. They have 5 certificates of completion from Pathways to Change. Yet here they are again. They've committed a new offense and they're in trouble again. Well, one logical conclusion could be, well, you know what? Maybe this offender just can't be reached. Maybe this offender is incorrigible. Maybe this offender is so high risk and so high need that there's really nothing we can do to help intervene with their behavior. That's one logical conclusion. Another logical conclusion is that Pathways to Change is an ineffective program that uses an ineffective curriculum and ineffective strategies in helping people change behavior. So in addition to pointing our finger at offenders and say, oh, they just can't change, they can't do it, they're broken, or they can't be helped, let's also shine some light on the programs that we send offenders to that we think are effective, because not all of them are. There's a lot of quackery out there, so to speak, correctional quackery. In fact, that's the title of an article that you've run across. So keep that in mind. So this week is all about treatment. Now you're going to see these articles mention some of the principles that you've mentioned before. Again, don't be put off by that. I know you've been reading about risk, need, and responsivity for a while now, but in this particular instance, we're applying those principles are being examined, at least in part, within the context of correctional treatment programming, rehabilitation, something that is in and of itself. It fits ideally within the landscape of correctional interventions, using that term broadly. But this is an up close and intimate look at what constitutes effective treatment and also ineffective treatment. And so keep that in mind, and keep in mind what some of the ramifications are on the system level as well. All right, I'm expecting good things from you this week, given the material and given the broad nature of the questions. So keep that in mind. All right, good luck and read carefully.